Test 1 2, test 1 2. Test 1 2, test 1 2. Test 1 2, test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
So you all know, the trustees' meetings have been running over, and they've been at it since 8 o'clock yesterday morning, so they're just taking a few minutes break, just kind of deep breaths, do it when needs to do it, because they do meetings all day long, so they'll be easier in 5 minutes. Pretty good. But anyway, they'll be here shortly.
almost used up a pen and the legal pad, so I'm gonna get another legal pad out just in case. He's trying to climb. Yeah, don't hurt yourself, Doctor.
I was like, my goodness. Yeah, I'm an old man. I can't do
The
this.
expectant mothers need you.
If I break my ankle, I can't do much.
Your practice delivered my office manager's baby.
Oh, really? Good, good. She delivered with a midwife or physician?
Midwife, but she said you were in the group and she saw you during that period. Yes.
Oh, excellent.
Her second.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm not sure about her first.
This is important.
Well, that's why we brought cookies. That's why we're here.
But Dr. Wright, no munching in the microphone. No munching in the microphone.
Wow. Oh.
So you eat your cookies now.
Oh, I see.
President, vice president graduated.
And
Somebody showed these papers in terms of who we celebrate. The University Court qualifying election. The highest person left standing.
was you?
I'm the Gerald Ford.
Gosh. Of Ohio State student government. Incredible.
Oh, my goodness.
Incredible. Yeah. Yeah. Did they elect someone new?
Yeah, we had
Shortly after. But it was after graduation.
no, there was a gap.
I see.
Good.
So in the summer, there was just no.
Like rough drop from the smoke. I took an inhaler session.
What's that?
I said I used my inhaler session.
I left mine at home.
I have asthma.
Well, when that doctor gave me one for the bronchitis.
Just like class.
Oh, I see.
Everybody
I
goes.
see. So you only started in January.
I served in June. I served in May. I served
In May. I see. And then they had a new election in May.
yeah.
How did they? I mean, classes. Because you would imagine classes, everyone was left, weren't they? Or was it online? Oh, okay. Okay, well that's good. Yeah.
They shouldn't have any flight issues. Yeah, I'm hoping. It's supposed to be like in the 40s here on Saturday. It's freezing.
It'll be a heat wave.
Yeah.
People will be out in their shorts.
That's a good story.
Yeah, most of the people in student government
Check the flights. I may be in Dallas next week, actually.
Wow.
You're Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in Dallas.
Let's see, somebody sent me.
I'm gonna be there Monday.
No, you.
At the
I
rest
know
of
a
the
lot
week
about
I'm
how
in
universities work.
Rutgers.
A lot more than I ever could.
Oh, okay.
I'd say otherwise, give me a
A lot
call
more than
and
I
buy
ever
you
could
dinner.
have ever could.
Guys, I'm gonna go.
Should have been there.
What bankruptcy guy?
Yeah, that one was
We're supposed to be 6 or 6:30.
That's the one I knew. Hank Best.
Yeah, we had 6 o'clock. So I guess we could start.
Yeah, big guy, bankruptcy wise.
It actually looked pretty.
They're a real good shop.
It was, yeah.
I think we better go ahead and get started. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming out tonight. I think we'll go ahead and get started. A Board of Trustees meeting ran over, which means the sessions before yours ran over, so we apologize for being late, because we do know your time is valuable, and we appreciate your willingness to wait for us to talk with us about these important issues. My name is Benita Black, and I chair the Listening Tour Committee for the Board of Trustees and also the Governance Committee for the Board of Trustees. And I'm honored to be able to serve the university in this way. And I'm also a lawyer by day. I'm managing partner of Septo & Johnson's Louisville office, and committed to education among other education boards, and really appreciate the opportunity to serve here. The process tonight will be, I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves and their roles on the Board of Trustees, and then I will go over or paraphrase the questions that we want to guide the conversation that we have tonight, and then I will be quiet and listen. And I also want you to know that we want you to ask us questions if you have them. We'll do our best to answer them. And if we can't answer them, we'll do our best to get back with you with an appropriate response in an appropriate amount of time. And we sincerely want to hear from you tonight. So please share whatever's on your heart, and I think that will help give us some good input into an already fulsome and very informative process that we've been going through these last 20 hours or so. And we look forward to, 22 hours, we look forward to talking with you as well. And with that, I'll ask Dr. Wright if you could start with the introductions down that way.
So my name is Ron Wright. I am a practicing OBGYN private practice doc in Southern Indiana is where I practice. I live out in Oldham County. I went to the University of Louisville and graduated from medical school there in 1999. I am also on the Board of Trustees, and I welcome your questions and appreciate you all coming out on a cold night like tonight. Thank you.
My name is Vishnu Tirumalo. I'm the current student body president. Looking forward to hearing everyone's comments tonight.
Ina Trucios-Haynes, Chair of the Faculty Senate and Law Professor.
I'm Jim Rogers. I'm a former COO of Hillary Lyons, University of Louisville graduate, also a trustee, and I will be chairing the committee that takes all this information that we've gathered over the last, it'll be 24 hours, I guess.
A couple hours.
Yeah, a few hours, and put this into what we call a presidential letter with my committee.
I'm Brian Cromer. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees, and I'm an attorney at Stites and Harbison here in Louisville. Appreciate you all coming.
And we also have our search consultant, Bill Funk, from out of Dallas. And Bill, you can tell them a little bit about yourself.
Our firm is in Dallas. We work only in the higher education arena, and my firm has had the pleasure of conducting over 430 president and chancellor searches in the past 35 years. We're looking forward to working with this group and with the entire board on what we know is a very important search for the university, for the city, and certainly for the state as a whole. So I look forward to your comments.
Okay, so I'll briefly run through the questions. The first one is, what major challenges and opportunities will the next president inherit, both immediately and longer term? What attributes should the next president of U of L possess to be successful and best serve the diverse communities that work and learn here? Third question is, what would you say to a hesitant or reluctant candidate to get him or her to enter the applicant pool? And when you think of U of L, what themes most powerfully express the identity of U of L? Who U of L is, who U of L makes each of you, and how can we use those things to convince candidates to enter the pool? This is obviously despite the issues and concerns that the university's faced recently. And then the last question is, what should we have asked you that we didn't? Is there something that you think would inform the search and help us find the next best president that we haven't asked you about that you'd like to contribute? I will also say that we have a portal through which you can submit comments and questions. You can also email any of us if you can get either see us afterwards, get a card, or through Jake in the president's office, or any of your constituency representatives. Our information may even be on the website, but feel free to reach out to any of us individually. Feed us information about candidates, your thoughts, attributes, priorities for the next president, and we'd be happy to receive that information. We sincerely want to hear from each of you. That's why we're here, and that's why we're doing these sessions, and we appreciate your willingness to come out. And please use the microphones when you speak. The session's being live streamed, and we want the people that are listening in remotely to be able to hear your good comments. questions and suggestions. And with that, I'll open the floor, and we're happy to listen to you. We also will answer questions that you have.
We're a nice small group, so please, everyone contribute.
I'll start off. My name is Stephen Skaggs. I'm a faculty member in the Fine Arts Department, and I teach graphic design, typography, and branding. I'm a graduate of the University of Louisville, 1969 to 1973, where I got a BA in fine arts and in philosophy, and returned here as a faculty member 35 years ago, and have been building the graphic design program in our fine arts department. My question has to do with the process. I know it's not the first time you've had this question directed to you. As all of you know, after what the university has gone through, there is a very severe trust issue here. We are also currently serving under a board of directors that was appointed by the governor, and the governor stated explicitly that he didn't think the state should be funding the liberal arts and humanities to any great extent. Given that background, my question is, how can we be sure without an open search, how can we be sure that the pool of candidates, no matter how great it be, doesn't contain the 4 candidates that the governor wants to have become the next president, so that ultimately the choice will be made from a list that's inside Governor Bevin's desk drawer right now? How do we know that wouldn't happen? How do you prevent it?
Well,
Thank you.
I don't know if you're aware that we've broadened the search at the end, so we have a quasi-open search. And today we further broadened that process to include the Red Book Committee and the deans in the search process, and to get some help calling the resumes down. And so we have broadened the search and have made it more inclusive.
I think the more you go in that direction, the more, because the next president, whoever she is, will not have the support she needs unless the faculty can be, these fears can be allayed. And we want them to be, you know.
And we're hoping the Red Book Committee that's made up of faculty, those representatives will get to meet all the finalists. So we're hoping that those people will be able to talk to their constituencies and convince you that through their interactions with candidates and through their helping me cull resumes and seeing candidates that are not finalists, they'll be able to dissuade any concerns of the population. And we know that we can't dissuade everyone's concerns, so there'll have to be some trust on both sides.
Do you feel that you guys are completely independent of government influence?
We are independent of government influence. And the governor, all the governor ever did was ask us to serve on this board. And after that, he said, go find out what needs to be done and do it. And that's exactly what we've been doing.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a search process that's designed to solicit candidate nominations from throughout the country. The nominations are open until February 15th. So by having a very strong process, that ensures that there isn't any kind of undue.
And we've received no recommendations from the governor to date. And I don't anticipate we'll get any. He has to deal with some pensions and things like that. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Barbara Stetson. I'm a faculty in psychological and brain sciences, and I'm the director of clinical training of our doctoral program in clinical psychology. I have been on the Belknap campus since 2002, and before that I was in the medical school, in the School of Medicine and in public health. And so my broad background has made me really very aware of the importance of collaboration and interdisciplinary approaches. And I think that it will be really important for the new president to have the kind of attributes where he or she also has a broad, big picture view of university life and academics that encompasses a spectrum of disciplines and collaboration. And I think it would be very helpful if people who are interviewing the applicant could ask them about their frame of reference to ensure that they understand state-of-the-art models for universities that are both private and state and use these interdisciplinary and collaborative approaches. I say this because I share Steve's concerns about the governor's perspective of focusing on STEM and careers that are quick out-of-the-gate jobs for undergraduates. I understand that that's very important. My understanding of current thinking in academics is that students that have a broad education that includes the liberal arts, who also are well-rounded, do well, not only in things like computer science, but for graduate study, for medical school. And I would like the applicant to be interviewed about his or her understanding of that data. I think that would be particularly important. Relatedly, understanding the opportunities for undergraduates and graduate students for collaborating with faculty and people in the community, I think is part of that larger vision. So I hope that those attributes will be considered. I think that limiting the search to someone who might focus on a business model or not encompass undergraduate, graduate continuum or interdisciplinary work is missing out and is short-sighted. So I have some concerns about that.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, and we'll make sure to pursue that information with each of the candidates.
Maybe it's important to say that there are no limitations on the search in that regard. I mean, there's a process, and Mr. Funk's collecting the CVs, and yeah, I mean, appreciate your comments. I do want to say that there's, you know, we're going to have a lot of them, a lot of things to look at, but there are no limits like that on the sort of as a barrier to coming in. So
and I
appreciate your thoughts.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, we've heard from nearly every forum that of the desire to have someone who comes out of academia and with a strong academic background, and I think that's the sentiment of the members of the board too that I've heard.
I would just add, Dr. Stetson, as a poli-sci and philosophy student, your point is, you know, it's well taken that the school is not just STEM, and you know, I imagine that any president that we would hire would have an appreciation for all academic backgrounds.
I would echo that in many of our forums we've also discussed the interdisciplinary aspect of presidency, trying to help the different campuses communicate with each other to build on the platform of education that we are providing for our students. Me personally, I was a French major in college, and I'm a physician, so you don't get a whole lot more diverse than that. And so I definitely personally appreciate that benefit too. So we have heard that in many, many forums as well, and we appreciate that comment.
And we have no intention of recommending anything that would move just towards STEM and away from the fine arts or other art-related programs. I'm a political science, philosophy, and economics major, and I'm a lawyer, corporate lawyer, boring corporate lawyer, but I have a wide background in terms of education, and it's made a difference, so we get it. And we'll make sure the candidates do.
Please come to talk to us.
He has something for us.
I'm John Dries from Communications and Marketing, and actually I'm going to read a Twitter comment that came in a little while ago. This is Joel Schaefer. Says, I want a president that cares about U of L athletics as well, one that understands the value and money they bring to a university. It ups enrollment as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Lucas. I'm a faculty member in the College of Business and an assistant dean there. And obviously we all know that lately there have been issues surrounding scandals and other kinds of unsavory activity. So obviously in the next president, we're going to want somebody of very strong moral character and a lot of integrity. So can you speak to how the search committee is going to be able to go about screening for character? I know that's something that doesn't show up on a CV, but
I
how will
actually
you do that?
have our search consultant speak to that because he had to explain that process to us before we hired him to make sure that he had a fulsome process.
Okay, super.
Obviously, when you talk about screening for character, there are limited resources, and we're not so sure that it's a science as much as it is an art. But there are certain procedures you can go through that help get us to that point, and certainly intensive referencing. Our process will be doing some directed referencing when the search committee narrows the pool to a short list of around 8 to 10. We also will do LexisNexis and Google background checks at that point. And then after the committee interviews that short list, they will select 2, 3, or 4 finalists, and that group will sign a release form to allow us to do credit, litigation, criminal, and sexual abuse background checks. And then we will also do non-directed references at that point. The referencing really in these searches is an effective tool. We will know people on every campus from which these candidates will come, individuals who will be very forthright with us and who will not hold back. The search committee, which is also the board, will have spent a lot of time with these candidates as the search progresses. Not only will they interview these candidates several times, but they will also spend dinners with them, trying to get to know them better. And before the search is complete, they'll have an awfully good feel for who these folks are. I still say, though, too, there are there are things like Briggs-Myers personality instruments that one can use. They're just not used in this area, and they aren't predictive at all. And there's no validated tool that predicts success in these roles, nor that really speaks to some of the elements that you mentioned. But it's just really nitty-gritty referencing, spending a lot of time with these candidates and trying to get to know them as well as we can.
And I don't think it can stop there. I think that's what we do initially. I think then people change. But I think it's the board's responsibility to monitor the president, going forward, whether we meet monthly or quarterly, but certainly an annual review. I think then it falls on us to make sure he or she is doing the right things the right way.
And I found a consultant that will help us develop a tool to evaluate and assess the president along the way after that person is here. So we're going to be we've started working on that in 2017, and we'll hopefully get that concluded sometime after the person starts, but we definitely take this very seriously.
I think it's important to remember that the new board is not a rubber stamp board. We're not a board that works at the pleasure of the president works at the pleasure of the board, and the board works at the pleasure of the university's constituencies. And so for you all to be at events like this that tells us things that we are going to relay to those candidates and say, number one, the most important thing with anybody that comes in here is integrity, because we've had an issue with that in the past. And if that person is not someone of high integrity, that's going to come filtering out in our continued dialogues with each candidate. So, you know, obviously we're humans, and nobody's perfect. Nobody knows what's hiding in the hearts of, you know, of people, but we will do our best as a committee to find a president for this university that's going to be upright, honest, and is going to be the best fit for this university.
And with that wider input at that final stage, including the Council of Academic Officers and the Presidential Search Faculty Consultation Committee, and more students, more staff on 2 extra students, 2 extra staff members, and 2 deans, we have a process that helps us ensure that we're hearing from a lot of different constituents about about the candidates and who we might select.
Hello, I'm Jenna Haugen from the College of Business. I teach business communication. I think as an institution, our biggest strength is that we are a diverse and inclusive campus as much or more than some of the other universities. What I'm really looking for in a president is an advocate. So first part of this question is, what signals are you going to be looking for that the next person you hire is an advocate for those who are underrepresented? And then also as a metropolitan research university, which is a mission that I don't think is very well defined, how are you going to encourage, or what are you going to look for in a president to see where they might take our mission as an institution to really distinguish us as an institution from other Kentucky institutions so that we can continue to grow as a university and really define that mission. So I just want to know kind of signals on diversity and inclusivity and what our mission is moving forward.
I think on diversity and inclusivity, we can certainly look at their track record. We can look and see if they're a leader, where they are, what kind of team is around them. Are they surrounded by like individuals? Are they surrounded by people of diverse backgrounds by various definitions? And are they empowering people of all types, or do they have a fiefdom where they empower people that are similarly situated? Do they come out of the ivory tower and deal with students, faculty, and staff? Or do they pretty much, you know, hang in a certain place and leave that to, you know, deans and other people? So those are some of the ways we can certainly assess that, and we can look at their track record in terms of whether they've written anything, whether they've led anything in that direction. We're going to ask for people to show us proof. They can easily pay lip service and say they think it's a great thing and it's wonder and let's sing Kumbaya in the circle of love, but if they can't show us actual demonstrated work in the area, that'll tell us something about that. And this is a theme that has resonated in all the sessions we've held, so we know how important it is and how big of a part of the culture it is here. So I'll answer the first question, and I'll allow somebody else to answer the second question.
Well, I don't know if it answers the second question, but, you know, we talk about what we want in a president and all the things we want to do, and then we talk about all the challenges or opportunities they have. One person cannot do all that. They're going to have to surround themselves with strong people, and they're going to have to empower those people to make decisions. And you've got to be careful, because empowerment in the wrong hands is a very dangerous thing. So we're going to have to trust them to hire the right people, promote the right people, move the right people that are here, and empower those people, because we heard today HR was an issue. And we asked the question, is HR empowered to do the things you think they should do? And they weren't sure if they were or not. But he or she cannot do it all by themselves. This is a big university. And they're going to have a strong team, a trusted team, and they're going to have to empower that team.
And we know with the top-down leadership model, we do need somebody that does more than pay lip service to things. So we do need to see a demonstration.
Excuse me.
I was going to say, and we do have some guiding documents that will help anyone coming into this environment. We have a 2020 plan that centers community engagement and diversity and inclusion and social justice. And so any candidate who comes in will have to speak to what we have already said are the goals of the university and how to move some of that forward. So we'll be asking about how a candidate might move those missions and goals forward.
I would also add that if you're talking about a metropolitan research university, we could take a look at their background. So most likely looks like the candidates will be from academia. We can see where they've taught before, where they've worked before. We can see, what their prior schools like, where they taught at. Are they comfortable in cities like Louisville? Are they comfortable working with people of color? Are they comfortable working with, or do they have experience? So those are all things we could look at.
I think too, with respect to the Metropolitan Research University and all those types of issues, to me, that goes to the vision for the university. As somebody who's a good leader, and you look at their track record and all those things, but also you want to have somebody that comes in here and has a 5 to 10 year whatever plan. Here's how I'm going to do things here. This is my vision for the university. You don't want somebody who's coming here to say, okay, well, I'm going to retire in a couple of years. I think I'll come and be the president of U of L for a while. That's not what this position is, and that's not what the university needs. What the university needs is somebody who's going to come in and roll up the sleeves and really work hard to take this place to the next level. It's got so many wonderful things going on, but that's what you need to have, and that includes, it's not just a sort of a stale list of talking points about doing something at a university. It's what is specific to the University of Louisville and what are the needs of the university. That's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think it's vision and leadership to go to that. That's one of the things to that particular point. Sorry, my sleeves are rolled up. I didn't mean to say anything about that. It just happened to be.
Hi, good evening. I'm Paul DeMarco. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences, and I'm also an associate dean of the School of Interdisciplinary and Graduate Studies, which is a long title for our graduate school here at the university. I've been a faculty member here since 1995. And so off of the comments that we've just heard about this being a metropolitan research university, I know you've heard from some other faculty that, and you probably know from our statistics, that we're classified as a Carnegie I research-intensive university, but we're very close to losing that status because of metrics based on grants and also on graduate student, especially doctoral student productivity. And so we hear a lot about how important grants are to a university in terms of attracting faculty and in terms of even creating revenue for the university and prestige for the university. And as my role as an associate dean in the graduate school, I'm very concerned with training graduate students who then become ambassadors for the university as they go on in their careers. But what we also don't think about much in terms of this Research One categorization is what it means for undergraduate students at the university. And I am often asked by the Office of Undergraduate Admissions to interview or to meet with prospective undergraduate recruits. And inevitably now, when I meet with these students, they always ask, what are the research opportunities for me at the university? And so it's not just graduate students who are coming to research universities to look for these opportunities. This is high on the list of prominent undergraduate recruits. And so I hope that the incoming president realizes that the R1 classification is not just for attracting faculty and graduate students, but it's also an important metric for undergraduates. I met with an undergraduate today, in fact, who was considering U of L, Vanderbilt, IU Bloomington, and Cincinnati. And so these are the schools that we're competing with. And the student asks, what are my research opportunities, and how soon, if I come to U of L, can I be involved in research? And it's not just STEM research that we often think of, that students are interested also in working with faculty who do creative works in the arts and humanities. So we have to think about research broadly in that respect too. So, so just wanted to convey that to the committee in terms of your
Thank you.
vetting candidates. Thank you very much.
Jerry Villiger again from Physics and Astronomy. I spoke a little bit yesterday. I thought about our conversation. I appreciate all the good comments here. I have a couple of additional thoughts. The moment the new president steps on campus as the president, that person needs to be credible to the students, faculty, staff, constituents, to you, to the city, to the alumni, and to the various parts of the state government immediately. So the person basically is going to be following this situation that we have, which is rather unfortunate. So instant credibility, I think, is a must. I've thought also a lot about the research aspects and how we rank, or how we define ourselves with Kentucky. We do not compete for students, faculty, staff, resources, money, just in Kentucky. We compete nationally and globally, internationally. And so the president needs to have in the vision the national and global perspective. The United States is competing for people. We're competing for people on the national level. As our identity, we have our long-term people, our students, faculty, staff, our alumni, our community. If the president doesn't get credibility from those constituencies and doesn't show measurable improvement to our situation in the span of some years, and I like the idea, somebody else mentioned there has to be a plan, and there has to be measurable progress, then the support of all of those people can erode and people can leave. And that's probably already started. I hope it's just a trickle. And I think that the faster we get a credible, optimistic president with a vision, the faster we can keep the people that we have. One other thing that I mentioned to a couple of you after the discussion yesterday. This university would be nowhere without students. No students, no faculty. If we had no students, there'd be nobody else. If you're here for a bachelor's degree or master's degree, the outcome that you want after your degree is graduate school or a job. You want an education. Now, the university can't get you a job, but it can help. If you get a PhD, you want to get a job. Now, some parts of the university are really good at that, and I admire them and respect them. Some of them are leading, and some of them are less leading, let's say. And I would like to see the president see our greatest product, not research dollars attracted, not tuition dollars attracted, not buildings bought. It's what do our students do after they leave. I've seen a couple of powerful signs for Center College. 98% of our students have a job or in graduate school a year after graduation. Now that's actually pretty tough because that's a product also of the students that you admit, and we have a mission to educate the people of the state of Kentucky. And that's good, and I think that we need to work with the students that we have here. So 80% of our students are from Kentucky as undergraduates. At the same time, if they graduate and they're employed in a job which doesn't value their skills, and there are skills in arts, there are skills in languages, there are skills in history, in philosophy, and writing. I make my physics students write, and I tell them to learn languages, because it's important. And I tell my gen ed students to use the high school math and science that they use, because they're going to use it in my class, because they have to be scientifically literate to make good decisions. So it goes both ways. In the global marketplace, all of these skills are important. And so I would like our president to see not just the value of these in themselves, which is very important, but how they apply to jobs and talk to the job community, businesses and government. What do they want so that we can train people to go into them? And that includes philosophy and French.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jerry Willing. I'm in the Department of Chemical Engineering, faculty member there for the last 15 years, also the associate chair of the department. One of the things that I think is unique about U of L that you don't see in a lot of other places across the country is our focus on experiential learning. You know, obviously in Speed School we have the co-op program, which is a very strong component of our brand, but we're not the only school in U of L that has those types of programs. You've got the dental program and all the work that they do out in Eastern Kentucky. You've got the student teachers in CEHD that are going out into the community to actually help teach classes. The nursing program has a number of these opportunities, and we even have just a whole office within the university about community engagement, getting our students out there. And so one of the things I think that the president that you're bringing in really needs to be aware of and really needs to utilize to their advantage is this both state and regional goodwill and reputation that we've built on these programs. And I think that's really a key part in expanding our reputation nationally and beyond. And like I said, there's not that many places that have that kind of reputation. Cincinnati, maybe, and a couple other ones. But that is a very unique component that we have at U of L, and that's a strength that's got to be further developed. And so not only by the president, but I think, you know, also you guys have a role in that as well, as we continue to try to develop and bring more recognition to U of L overall. So.
Thank you.
Hi, I've got a question and a comment. My quick question is, if you had to sum up, because you've done a few of these now for these conversations, if you could sum up a few different buckets of where people have sort of said what they want in the president, could you just sort of outline those quickly?
What people have asked for?
Yeah, if you could sum it up
Sure,
in a few
sure.
different buckets, that'd be great.
Common themes.
I'll start. Integrity, honesty, culture, diversity, representation for all the communities, all the campuses, research, don't lose the focus on grad students, transparency. Yeah.
Okay.
Y'all can add any.
Someone who's academic, who's got an
Right.
academic background.
Okay.
That's been a big one.
Great.
Someone who can interface with political units and move the agenda of the university forward despite current conditions.
Sure. And I'll just
Globally.
kind of introduce myself. My name is O.J. Oleka. My perspective is as a former student body president, 2009-2010 school year. Of course, I served as a student trustee as well. I'm studying higher education, Bellarmine University, a doctoral program. So I'm kind of looking at this from a few different angles. I think by virtue of the position that we have as the University of Louisville, some of those things we'll get because the city of Louisville, driven by the University of Louisville, plays a particular role for Kentucky's economy. I think by nature of who we have within that role as president, who of course government affairs, those offices will have the attention of the governor, of the General Assembly. So I don't think we necessarily need to look for people that have a particular strength there, because I think those come with the territory. I think we'll find or retain good people in those particular roles. I think that we need three things specifically in the next president here at the University of Louisville. You spoke to them already. Integrity. Obviously, one of the main issues that we're dealing with as a community is the integrity of an administration that people can agree on is without reproach. So I think what we need to find is somebody who has that professionally. We find somebody who, of course, professionally has done exceptionally well. There is no issue within their background that we could be concerned with regard to how they operate within their capacity of work. That's number one. Secondly, I think we need somebody that is student-focused. Again, you touched on this. You talked about the idea of people that recognize graduate students, but also people that get the diversity, the complexity of the student body at the University of Louisville. I think attached to that, a way you can find that is somebody who has dealt with students. Obviously, as you graduate people, as the gentleman mentioned there, you want to make sure that people are employable, but you want to also make sure that they're better for it. It's not just good enough to go to an academic institution, learn a little bit more, have a degree behind your name, and so you can make a little bit more money, but also so you're a better person holistically. I think someone who gets that, who understands the importance of student development, not only in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom. So incorporating a student affairs perspective, I think, would be helpful. So making sure that someone has integrity, making sure that they're student focused. And third, I think we need an alum. I think it's very dangerous if we go out and find somebody who necessarily says, well, I want to come to University of Louisville to make it a project. You can't have somebody who is, particularly in the higher education space, that says, well, U of L is a great school and a great city and a great commonwealth that's had some challenges. I can make my mark here as an education leader. I mean, I don't know about you all the people here. Quite frankly, I'm sick of always having to defend my alma mater, always having to defend my institution. I'd like somebody who's had to deal with that themselves, who recognizes the real pain, the real difficulty of what it is to have to explain why U of L is a good school, why the alums that went to this institution are good people, and why it's so difficult to have to turn back some of the things, some that may be true, some that may not be true. So I think finding an alum who has all these qualities, somebody who can say, I've been through the trenches with you, I not only understand the complexity of the student body, but because I was a student here, and they can really get that aspect, really speak to it, and of course they've got that integrity beyond reproach. I think that's the kind of person that we'll need, because if you've got that, then they can meet some of the intangibles. You don't have to teach somebody what it means to be near the clock tower, or what it means, why that ramp is such a big deal, even though that's changing a little bit in the future designs. But somebody who gets those things, who recognize why this institution is so important. If you don't have to teach that, then I think they can do some of the other things pretty well. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Twitter.
I just have one sort of quick question, and somebody else had brought up the 2020 plan as one of our guiding documents. But it's 2018, that 2020 plan is really starting to become quickly obsolete. So obviously the incoming president is going to have a fairly large task in not necessarily redefining, but at least re-looking at that plan and saying, okay, what are we going to do and how far out are we going to do it? But they're going to be fairly new, and so they're going to need a lot of guidance. And so I guess my question is, how do you see yourselves helping the incoming president in that sort of guidance? And you know, based on everything you've heard, where do you see those next big things that we need to be going after in the next 5-10 years beyond the 2020 plan?
I think for us it starts with education. The board spends a lot of time looking at documents that outline the tenets of the 2020 plan, outline the ideals that each area of the campus is looking at, what, you know, not just the faculty and the staff, but the students, you know, everybody, and us educating ourselves as board members and then relaying that education, that information to the president and saying, okay, don't forget about this group over here that we were saying we wanted to have them at this level by 2020. Granted, 2020, like you said, is very close, and so in 2 years, we may have to push it out to 2025, but to not forget that we still want to build these other programs up. So it starts with us educating ourselves and being able to speak intelligently about those plans.
I imagine that whoever the new president is, they would also hopefully host forums like this, like I know Dr. Posto has, but still have a job too in terms of educating themselves, especially if they're not alumnus or if they're not from the community. They'll have their work cut out for them, and hopefully they'll they'll roll up their sleeves and get into that, because there's a lot to do, and as you said, they'll probably have to come up with a new strategic plan after the 2020 plan expires.
So I'm always interested in hearing what people think are what's distinctive about U of L, and I think several of you have spoken about that, the idea of community engagement, and as a Research One institution, providing those research opportunities to both undergraduate and graduate students, Is there anything else anyone would like to add to that? What you think makes us distinctive?
I was at a meeting over the weekend with a member of the faculty at University of Kentucky who's in a similar position to me, administrating a clinical program, and we noted that the perspectives were somewhat different, even in terms of budgetary management of things like distance education for graduate students, et cetera. I know that the budgets are different and that each of the state universities seems to have a bit of a niche in terms of, I know, for example, with NIH funding, for example, Appalachia as a population for research grants is mostly affiliated with UK. Here at University of Louisville, we have more of an urban, underserved focus, focusing on ethnic diversity. I think that it will be helpful for an incoming president to understand that we have multiple state universities. Their budgets are different. The student bodies are different. The research populations that they traditionally service are different, and the surrounding communities are pretty different. I often think about Louisville being very strong in terms of having ties with the community, like the Community Partnership Grant. I think someone over here was mentioning that. I think that's a real strength, and playing to that strength is important, but really understanding the relationships and budgetary associations, I think, is different. I think we have to build rather than taking away from one university to strengthen another and to understand our community.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that we had heard at one of the other sessions was that they didn't feel that University of Louisville was doing enough in the West End of Louisville and trying to improve our image and our input in the West End, I think is an important thing too, and that kind of speaks to the idea of how U of L wants to increase its scope in the general community, and that's an area that certainly could use some more people going in there and starting programs that are going to be beneficial to our city in general too.
Kind of to answer one of your question there, one of the things that I think is unique about U of L is we do act somewhat as a partner for a lot of other people, and we actively seek those things out. When you look at how U of L interacts, we actively engage University of Cincinnati. We actively try to engage a lot of other universities within the state. You look at things that are happening on the Ohio River, and U of L forms one of the critical partners within discussions on how do we deal with issues with the Ohio River and the Ohio River Valley. And so that's a fairly unique position to be in, because other universities that I've been at are more segregated. This is us, this is what we do, and we're going to ignore everybody else. And U of L is a lot more open to those types of collaborations with other universities, other cities, and I think that's one of our key aspects.
Thank you.
I'll make one just quick comment about that, which is when you look at University of Louisville and look at the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the surrounding areas, you've got to have somebody as the president. Somebody was talking about advocacy earlier, and that's very, very important, and outreach. And I said at one of our other sessions, having gone to Austin a couple of years ago with a group from here, and look at what University of Texas does to the city of Austin. Kentucky has a talent issue in terms of an educated population. You hear brain drain in those terms. And with reference to the business community, one of the biggest issues here is talent. And the University of Louisville needs to be a massive aggregator of talent to bring people here. And it's just critical that that happen. And you've got to have a president that comes in and sees that vision. I mean, that's an aspirational goal. You know, the University of Texas is a massive place, we understand that, but at the same time, University of Louisville can be kicking out that kind of talent for the city, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I do think, you know, a lot of these things we're talking about, you know, you have to see what the candidates look like, hear what they have to say, and there's some intangibles in there, but you need to hear certain things and that are unique to University of Louisville. So.
Hello, I'm Alex Kearns. I'm a senior chemical engineering student, actually a student of Dr. Willing. And I just have a question, or more of a clarification on the closed search process. So I know that kind of one of the reasons given for the closed search was it's a preventative measure. We don't want potential candidates to step back away from this process because we don't want their employers to find out that they might be looking for a job elsewhere. And I understand that concept, but I think one thing that we really need with our next university president is someone with that integrity, and we've heard that over and over again. And at the beginning, I think you gave an explanation of how you kind of look for those things. You talk about dinners that you guys may have with them, spending a lot of time with them. But in my personal opinion, the best way to see how someone manages is to ask the people they manage. And just, I was wondering how that works with the closed search process. Will you still reach out to, say, if you were looking at, I'm just going to use Dr. Pinto at UC, how unlikely it is that he would come back, but would you ask people that he works with, people that work under him, with the closed search process, or would that still be something you wouldn't do?
Oh, we have Bill Funk. Good question.
That's a great question because it does sound counterintuitive in a way. But in the, even though a search was partially closed, and as you've heard, that's been modified a bit and opened up at the end. When these candidates are one of, say, 8 of the short list, we talk to them about making directed references and ask them to provide us then with 3 people who know their work well, but who they have confidence in maintaining their confidentiality. And what we find is at that stage in the process, they're willing to give you 3 directed references. They don't want you to do carte blanche, calling anyone and everyone, because the odds are still long. You know, they're 1 in 8, or 1 in 9, 1 in 10. So that's how you handle it at that stage. When they're a finalist, when you tell them that they're one of 3 or one of 4 finalists, there's kind of an acceptance of the fact that we have to do non-directed referencing. We work with them. We try to be as discreet as we can. You try to do it as quickly as you can so that the word doesn't begin to spread. But you always are trying to keep those candidates, protect them, because they really are nervous at that stage. I mean, they're nervous throughout the process about, especially if they're a sitting president, or if they've been a provost, for example, and they've been in other searches and were revealed in a search in the last 3 months or 6 months. You know, they think they've used up the one pass that they've had, and if they're announced as, or if it is released that they're a candidate again, then that really weighs on their home institution. So you have to do it quickly, you have to do it with great discretion, but you still have to do it. And I think candidates understand that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Let's move it over here.
Any other comments, questions, attributes, opportunities that we could tell a candidate about that you think makes U of L unique?
I had a question about the use of a firm. How much oversight does the board have with your firm, and are you just presented with a short list of candidates? Are you actively involved in the adding and elimination of candidates?
We are actively involved.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And
And
there's,
we're hard on him too, just so you know.
I was gonna add,
I'm his worst nightmare.
I was gonna add, there's more information on the website, but just generally, you know, people submit their applications to Mr. Funk, and then the board collectively has an opportunity to review and call the candidates. But at least from my understanding, we do that on our own. They're not involved in eliminating any candidates, or I mean, they may recruit candidates to join the pool, but they do not call the list in any way.
And he's also sought our input to lure some candidates that we haven't heard from. 135 people showed interest. We have 45 active candidates. We expect 20 more maybe. But we have a short list of people that we plan to start calling that he thinks would be uniquely positioned to help this institution and to add value. So we plan to look at those and start making those shameless calls.
My name is Eric Rieger, and I'm a senior electrical engineering student here. My question is, I kind of want to pick the brain of the board and the firm here. So I've been following the forums a little bit, and just, you know, you see a lot of comments for desirable qualities and attributes. It's a long list, and it almost seems a little bit, I don't want to say idealized, because we're not going to get a candidate who has all of this list that has been amassed. They're all good qualities. But I guess I'm wondering is, you also made a comment earlier about someone who's able to come in and properly engage people in positions to go on and do more, because this person, whoever they may be, is not going to come in and do this entire job themselves. Yeah. So are we looking for somebody, or is there a preference for someone who's maybe already been in a position, such as like a president, leadership position, who has shown and emulated your strong leadership and enacting a vision at a place, or someone who's maybe just been in a variety of different positions, amassed a lot of experience in different areas, who can come in with a broad array of knowledge of different departments and, you know, how diverse our university is.
Those all sound like good candidates, actually.
I know.
So, yeah, and I hope we see that. I hope we see, and I think we will see. I hope we have a tough decision. You know, I hope it comes down to the final three. To me, I would love to see it be a jump ball. That, you know, somebody just doesn't. If somebody stands way out, that's great. But I think we're going to get. This would be a great place to come to. You know, we say challenges. Those are also opportunities to come in and make a difference and make a change. You know, some people say they don't want somebody that's going to be here for 5 years and then leave, or 6 years or 7 years. I think they might want somebody here 15 years. I think the average president sits for 6 or 7 years. I'd rather have somebody great for 6 years than somebody that's like mediocre and nobody else wants for 15 years. So I think it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's going to be doable. I really do. So I think I hope we see all those qualities that you described in the various candidates. And I think any one of those could be a very, you know, one of the top 3 candidates.
Mr. Funk, I think you can speak to this question as well.
Why don't you just keep it?
Please do.
It's a great question, and of course, at the beginning of every search, you know, we develop a strategy to, you know, who is it that we're going to target, what kind of background and the like. Certainly there are sitting presidents in the pool already. The question is, and the issue is always, typically presidents won't make lateral moves. You know, if they're at an institution of similar size, complexity, and stature as Louisville, there's no incentive to make that move necessarily, unless they have some personal tie. You know, if they're an alumnus, or they have children living in the area, or their elderly parents are here, or they were on the faculty at one time and want to come back. And all those things happen from time to time. But otherwise, you're recruiting, or you're seeing the interest being expressed by sitting presidents at smaller institutions of perhaps less complexity and stature. Well, those individuals may not come into the position with the kind of credibility that the faculty and staff and others want to have in their next president. So one of the primary sources we look for are the provosts at higher stature, larger, more complex institutions. And in the sense, it's still a step up though, because now they're going from provost to president. You know, AAU presidents are AAU provosts are one provost. Even the deans of large arts and science departments and so on of those very best schools would be targets for us. But it is an interesting question because in a way you'd like to have those sitting presidents because they've seen every issue come across their desk. But if they're not from the right place, they sometimes don't have the credibility with their in-house audience.
That was answered very well. I guess you kind of brought to a good point is, I understand completely someone at a university similar to ours is not going to move. It's very unlikely. So I guess if you were to qualify it down to two types of candidates, you have people who are provosts at similar universities or sitting presidents at maybe smaller institutions, in which one, I mean, they're going to have their pros and cons, but if there's a preferred one for us in your minds.
I think that will kind of come out through the process, and it could be that we'll have a diversity of backgrounds in the short list and finalist candidates. It's interesting, and this may be of some interest to the group, the candidates that are usually, shall we say, the weakest are usually those candidates who respond to the ad. And, number one, that means they're looking for a position. We think the best candidates are those individuals who are happy where they are and maybe haven't even thought about making a move. We've had candidates for the presidency at Clemson, a mattress salesman in Aiken, South Carolina, applied for the position. Now, not that that's not an honorable profession, but probably wasn't the right one for being the president at Clemson. So your ad respondents, we look at the ads as a communications tool to get the word out that the position is available and that the search is underway. It's not a particularly effective recruiting tool. That comes from third-party nominations and good targeting.
Okay. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, I wanted to add, you asked about the qualities and that we've heard so many different qualities here, and not to put them in the hot seat, but after these listening tours are completed, we're going to be coming up with a leadership statement that Jim Rogers over there will be developing with the other members of that committee, including the constituents, and that will hopefully outline some of the qualities that we're looking for in the president and in almost a job description, and we'll kind of summarize the listening tour. So that'll be something to look out for.
All right, I would just say one thing too, for just sort of on a real world level. I was at one point a co-chair of my firm's recruiting committee for several years and was involved with recruiting law students for a long time. And you do have certain things that you look at in terms of the qualities that you want. And then you get an applicant pool and you talk to people and you kind of see what's there. And all of a sudden there might be 2 or 3 people, they just jump off the page at you. And I think, we know what we're looking for. You kind of have to see what the applicant pool looks like. But you made a pretty good description of pretty good candidates right there. We just have to see what it's going to look like. But I'll tell you what, going on the listening tour, hearing everybody's perspective, there are a lot of common themes, and we are listening. I'll just say that. But thank you for getting up and talking.
Actually, got a second question to that point. Obviously, you want whoever you select to be successful in the role. A lot of that depends, of course, on the relationship with the board. Board governance is essential for any university. Are you all having conversations with the candidates, basically outlining to them what their relationship would be like with you all as a board? Or have you all discussed that as a group internally? This is how we want to be, this is how we want to interact with the new president, and so on, and if you could elaborate on those conversations.
We haven't interacted with the candidates yet. We're waiting for the application process to close out so we don't give anyone an unfair advantage or advanced look. But we do, I chair the governance committee, and we do have, we're trying to put into place and then utilize best practices in governance. I've used a lot of resources from the AGB to establish some of the things that we're doing. So I anticipate we will have those conversations as we move into the next phases of the search. But be assured that the governance piece will be, sort of the four corners will be pressed, so to speak.
All right, thank you.
So in recent history, we've had a lot of leadership instability, some scandals, FBI investigations, upheaval in the athletics departments, really large budget cuts. Certainly I might think that there could be some people who, under better circumstances, would think, I would love to be the president of the University of Louisville. So can you speak to, one, what extent you think that current stressful conditions have maybe deterred some people or maybe curbed their enthusiasm? And second, if you can speak to the overall quality of the candidates coming in, and not just as are there quality people in there, but how does this pool stack up against pools in recent history at similar institutions?
I'd like you to address that because you have all the applications, and we have had this conversation.
And that's a wonderful question, and you're certainly right that these issues that the university has had to deal with have somewhat chilled the pool. Understandably, candidates want to go, if they're in the market for a presidency or want to be a president, they're probably risk averse and want to go to that place where they can most probably be successful. And so I think we have to be honest with ourselves. I think that has probably deterred some candidates. And as we've reached out around the country, there are people who say, gee, Bill, I've been following the stories in the Chronicle of Higher Education, and I just don't think that's for me right now. The truth of the matter is, though, there are some people, you don't want those individuals who might be frightened by or scared off by those factors. You want that person who says, gee, if I were in charge, or I can make this right, I can really turn this university around. So in terms of that self-selection, it probably leads us to the right kind of candidate. And we shared yesterday with one of the groups, we did a search at the University of Oklahoma. It's been a while, but it's similar because there was a shooting in the athletic dorm of one player shooting another. There was a gang rape in that athletic dormitory 2 or 3 weeks later. The FBI arrested the starting quarterback on their national championship football team for trafficking in cocaine, 6 weeks later. And I remember we were, the search committee chair and I would report back to the board once a month, and I remember saying on one occasion, this is getting to be a pretty tough search. Meanwhile, Ted Koppel on Nightline was reporting on how the University of Oklahoma was out of control and wasn't being managed. And yet we found a good candidate. We found a number of good candidates who felt that, as they say, the bones of the institution were strong, and that there were strong programs there academically, and that with just the appropriate oversight and with the appropriate strategic planning and so on, they could rally that institution to its former glory. And really, that's what happened. The pool that we have, though, so far, I go through it constantly and look at the candidates. And when I did this just last night, I think there are 15 of those individuals that are truly very viable candidates. And when I compare that to other searches that we've conducted around the country, all of these searches seem to come down to 10 to 15 individuals that are just a little bit better than the others. You know, you have 10 or 15 that probably don't belong in the pool at all, and those are typically individuals who've applied. But these searches very much, it's fairly easy to narrow the pool to that short list. It gets harder and harder, but there will be 5 to 10 candidates in our pool that will be very, very strong. And that's really how all these searches seem to work. You know, we start out thinking we're going to have 50 A-plus players, but you don't have 50 A-plus players. So I'm bullish. I'm very excited about our ability to bring you some really good candidates.
Thank you.
I know you can't really be specific about this question, but from where you are today, do you have sort of in your mind a general timeline of how you see things progressing from here to, you know, having somebody installed?
We think we can have someone on board by May. There's a timeline that we posted on the portal that you can look at that talks about steps in the process. But based on where we are today with concluding the listing tour tonight, we anticipate being able to have someone, at least an offer made and have the vetting process started by sometime in May. Are there other questions? Comments, concerns?
Thank you all for your time to come out tonight and help us.
We appreciate your input and continue to give that input to us through the portal and or through emails to us, and feed candidates to Mr. Funk. Those applications go directly to him. And also be prepared to help us if we call on any of you that we know. I know you, OJ. And to help convince somebody to jump in the pool that's not. We're starting that process right now, making those calls. So thank you so much for being here tonight. The Board of Trustees, and on behalf of our chairman and the rest of the board, I want to thank everybody that participated in this process. Do we have any other Twitter stuff before we close out? Okay, well, we appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.